Okay, the area I'm in now, for which you pay a separate ticket fee, is the European section, known because it had 10 buildings in a European design. Whether they were built by Europeans, I don't know. They were designed by Castiglione, an Italian, and then a French priest, apparently. From that get-go, it has that look about it, with chunks of typical European architectural detail and devices. Typical device, this little knob fits into a hole, locks the vertical piece in place. And the scroll atop that pillar, I don't know if those were originally in that position, but, and of course that's classic Greek and Roman transferred to later times. Must have been very pretty, these buildings with their columns and that marble. Perhaps gardens in these areas surrounding these ponds. I wonder if they were individual homes or what kind of buildings they were. But it's interesting. You can just imagine the front of this building with its columns. There's one and two on either side. Would have formed the front, perhaps some kind of little porch area before you entered into the building proper. The sweeping stairways. Smaller than the French castles, perhaps, but reminiscent of. And the rubble just reminds you of a set piece for ruined Rome. This is a very nicely carved piece. Perhaps a roof eve piece. There's some kind of maybe banister, that square. Nicely remaining column. Amount of work that's represented by this. Some pretty panels. What purpose they served, I don't know, unless they were some kind of a wall. Look like doorways. This perhaps was over a doorway. This looks like it might have been a fairly large building. Who would have used these buildings? Was it for Europeans or just kind of a kitschy thing for the Chinese to do? I just came around the corner of a temporary barricade to discover that this area goes quite a distance, so that's probably just one little building complex. This was pretty, I'm sure, kind of a moat, and some centerpiece for presentation of something, or maybe it was, who knows. What I sense would have been considered novel here by the Chinese was the massiveness of not only the buildings themselves, but the elements of them. Since everything they built was seemingly with with wood, this should have been novel. Originally it was a two-story, three-room building that was eventually turned into a Muslim mosque for the benefit of one of the imperial concubines, who was apparently more important than just one of the group. This was the largest garden site of the Xiyanglu area, built 1759. Faced west, had 11 rooms on both floors. Both sides of the front door were two arc-terraced fountains, which led to a large fountain downstairs. Bronze statues of human bodies with animal heads representing the 12 symbolic animals associated with a 12-year cycle of human births were arranged around the large fountain. Each of these animals jetted water for 2 hours in the sequence of China's 12 two-hour time dividing system. and all the animals jetted water simultaneously at noontime. 3 of the bronze heads of animals were stolen. One resides in France, one in Taiwan. It was also called the clock because of the timing of the function of the fountains. So while of European design, very much Chinese in function and purpose. And we wonder what the significance of this little area in here is. Used to be a wall right where I'm walking. I wonder if this was like an aqueduct. It looks like it, carrying water, created its own rippling effect. How clever that would be. Notice how it turned a corner. That scalloped piece is quite a large, incredibly worked piece. That's an interesting structure. Hopefully there's an interpretive sign somewhere around that explains what it was for. Presumably all these pieces are numbered in the hopes that at some point in time they can reassemble these buildings. An impressive looking structure no matter what country you find it in. Very Roman-like, or Greek. And maybe that's what that building was that we saw. Simply a structure that was for some reason created in order to give a small hill to the main structure being built. What purpose the inverted step pyramid had to this design, I don't know. Presumably they would have to pile material back underneath it in order to be able to use it structurally. I don't know. This apparently was just perhaps a little fountain or a big fountain enclosure. For some reason, a statue of Victor Hugo. Apparently back in there is a tall man-made hill. Man-made because the Emperor Qinglong liked to ride his horse, and the trail up it was made very circuitous so that it took a long time to get up the hill, giving him the experience he hoped for. I'm trying to see if this is undercut in the same way as that other structure that seems to be, but I'm not sure I can see enough of it. Same thing up here. Seems to be. I can't be sure. This structure, Da Shuifa, built in 1759, the reign of Queen Qianlong. Garden site featuring fountains. Huge stone shrine in front of which was a lion head fountain producing a 7-level waterfall and an oval-shaped chrysanthemum fountain. In the middle of the fountain was a bronze spotted deer whose horns jetted out 8 water spouts. On both sides of the deer were 10 bronze dogs that also jetted out water spouts to the body of the deer. This meant the hounds pursuing the deer. There are 3 different panels here, one in the center and 2 to the side of it. The 2 to the side of it on either side are both the same, so it's symmetrical. They're both all 3 are glorifying war in some sense. There, that's rectangular thing you see is a quiver of arrows, I believe. There are also various pikes and other instruments of war, and there are swords and so forth, and I think a bugle up at the top of that one at an angle from upper left to lower right in the middle part. Here almost a knight in his armor, but cannon below, swords, pikes above, banners flying. So this actually was a foundation for a reservoir made out of tin, presumably rising above this, that provided the water for that garden feature that had all the fountains called the clock, which is beyond it. Certainly the layout of a fountain, providing a little pool down below, then probably some kind of statue sitting there, and then water would come up underneath it, and then apparently flows out either of those 2 rectangular holes there. But how they lifted it then at all up on top of that, the water, I don't know. What I don't understand is what's the point of the inverted step pyramid design? Why not just make it a block? intuitively, structurally, it's stronger flipped over as a regular pyramid. Some nice carving. You wonder where they got their designs from. I'm sure that the Italian brought over designs. Maybe drew them all out himself. This looks like a maze leading to that beautiful building. I wonder if that's an example of what many of these other buildings look like. If so, they must have been gorgeous. Were they purposely destroyed? How evil.